Hello again from Green Island Gardens. By popular request from several of our subscribers, I've been asked to do a couple of videos on what I consider to be the best type of plants in each category. So the best trees, shrubs, climbers, etc. Today we're looking at climbers. So I'm going to show you the 10 climbers which I consider to be the best plants. Little word of warning before we start about climbers. I often see people, or they ask me if they've got a fence or a house wall they want to cover, they ask which climber they should use. And a lot of climbers, actually, their whole purpose of their growth is to get as high as possible. So often things that are classed as climbers are not actually that effective on a fence or a wall. So I will show you some that I consider to be very good. Other alternatives would always be to use what I would call a wall shrub, or try and train a shrub as a wall shrub to cover for a fence panel, for example, or a house wall as we've got behind me here. Now this plant you may well recognise because it features in a lot of our videos. In fact, our most popular video was on Spermum itself. This I consider to be not only my number one climber, but my number one must-have plant of all time. It's called Spermum Jasminoides. Jasminoides, the second name, meaning looks like and smells like a jasmine. And a lot of people are fooled by it and assume that it is a jasmine. It's not actually a jasmine, but the second name, as I said, means that it looks and smells like it. This is an evergreen climber. It will clothe the surface, the wall or the fence, right from the base up. So you don't get all that growth that you would get with a lot of climbers that scramble to the top, drop over the other side of the fence, and then flower prolifically for your neighbour. This flowers all the way up from the base to the top. It has these beautiful white scented flowers, which the scent is just heavenly. And it flowers really from the end of May right through to September. We have it planted here on a north-facing wall, which is not what the label or the books would tell you. They always say it needs a south-facing sunny side, but this proves that that just isn't the case. In fact, if anything, I would say it looks more healthy here. In fact, the little bit of soil that it's planted in at the base is very, very poor. It's stony, rubbly, right next to the wall. It doesn't get much moisture, but it just loves this spot. This is just one plant here. It has been planted for over 10 years, but you can see the extent of its growth. But it's neat and compact, it doesn't become unruly, and we just literally take the hedge trimmer to it in the spring and cut it as you would a hedge and just snip round the windows to keep it looking tidy. Another bonus with this plant, not only is it evergreen, but it also colours beautifully in the autumn. The leaves in a sunny spot will go lovely orange and red, and then just miraculously turn back to green later on the following season. A lot of people ask if they can grow it in a pot because it does prefer a slightly acidic soil. It also says it might not be fully hardy, but as I say, this one faces north and it's been here for well over 10 years, so it's weathered really, really cold winters, and it just hasn't had a problem at all. The only time it may have a problem is when you've newly planted it. So just for the first couple of years, it might be worth protecting it if we have really cold spells, sort of -8 to 10. Just wrap a bit of fleece around it, and then once it's got away, it will be fine. It can also be grown in pots. This is the entrance to Green Island Gardens. So you see we have it here right beside the door. So the scent just wafts in of an evening. Is absolutely beautiful. And then we go through the entrance here. And you'll see we have it planted either side of the doorway on the other side, so facing south. This one here is planted in the soil. This one is in a pot. It has been in this pot for a very long time, and actually it could do with a really good feed or a change of soil, but it does grow perfectly well in a pot. And you can see because the leaves are slightly drier, they are already starting to colour. But all in all, my number one top climbing plant. So this is the second climber I'm going to show you today. And as you can see, it's positioned just as at the entrance, so a clue that it might be scented. And again, it is. Dragius sinensis is the most beautiful climber I first came across when I was visiting gardens down in Devon and Cornwall. Researched it and discovered that it might not be fully hardy, as with a lot of plants, they say on the labels. So I duly bought one and planted it up against this house wall. It's a south-facing wall, and I have to say it's thrived perfectly. It survived winters down to -10 and 15, and last winter, which was very wet and cold, down to -8. But these flowers, which come in the summer, June, July into August, absolutely beautiful. They're a little bit reminiscent of a Hoya flower, but the leaves are very different. It is deciduous, this one, but the scent, again, absolutely gorgeous. Really pretty flowers. And again, it's very amenable to just being cut back every year so that it doesn't become too unruly. But a super climber again. I could hardly do a video on climbers without including a clematis of some type. There are so many beautiful clematis with really enormous, really blousy heads. But I've chosen this one, which is Clematis etoire violette, purely because it's such a good doer. It's so reliable and it flowers prolifically. The labels will tell you that clematis like to be planted with their roots in shade and their heads in sunshine in order to do well. That's almost the case here, but we are facing northwest here, so you can see now at midday it is in the shade, but it's still flowering beautifully, so that's why I've really chosen this one. We prune it in the spring, February, March time, just prune it right back to a basic framework, and then it puts on all this growth each year and rewards with flowers for a good month or more. This is another clematis we've got here, slightly different type. This one flowers much later. Clematis Rihanna it's called. We cut it right back to just a basic stump in the spring, and then all this is this year's growth. It will clothe the rest of this wall by the time we get to September, October time, but it flowers usually early autumn with beautiful bell-shaped, lemon-scented, pretty little flowers for a really, really long time. So another clematis worth trying. Quite difficult to get hold of, and it is quite a rampant grower, so we do tend to cut quite a lot of it off. But if you want to hide maybe an unsightly oil tank or shed or something like that, this is a really good one. And again, it clothes the surface it's trying to screen right from the ground upwards and flowers from the base to the top. Another classic climber that we couldn't omit from a list is Wisteria. Now, Wisteria is a very rampant climber, so I would be wary against planting it up against a house. I would recommend growing it either trained as a standard, as we have here. This is Wisteria sinensis, which flowers with lovely long racemes of pea-like flowers in May. Or otherwise, I would grow it, allowing it to grow up into a tree. Growing it against a fence or as a low wall is not going to be successful, and if you put it onto a house wall, it needs regular pruning in order to keep it in check. If you are interested in growing a wisteria, please do check out our video on growing wisterias and pruning and how to care for them. This is another one of my real favourite climbers. It's called Schizophragma Hydrangea. A lot of our visitors come in and ask me what's the climbing hydrangea in the Japanese garden, and I explain to them that it's not actually a hydrangea. A bit like the Spermum Jasminoides, this is Schizophragma Hydrangea because the flowers look very similar to a hydrangea. This one has been here now for 24 years, and you can see it really hasn't become unruly. It clothes the trellis and the arch very neatly and flowers right from the base up to the top, so I would really recommend this plant. Vines are another lovely climber to choose, especially if you want to have something you can eat. This is my favourite one for ornamental value though. This is Vitis Vinifera Purpurea. So it has very purple leaves, dark purple when they emerge. They go slightly greener, but still a nice mottly purpley colour. And you can see already a nice damp summer, and we're forming lots and lots of grapes. I wouldn't grow them purely for eating purposes, but this one colours beautifully in the autumn. So it'll go really beautiful scarlet red colours. You can see some of the leaves already are starting to colour. So really pretty climber for autumn colour, this one. The next one I'm going to show you is a really magnificent climber, but it needs a lot of space. This is Vitis conyetti. It is related to all the grape family, being a Vitis, but the leaves are very different. It doesn't produce any fruits. Nice climber, but its real peak is in the autumn when it just goes spectacular orange, reds colours, and makes a real feature here in the water garden. Another one of my favourite climbers is this one, Stauntonia Hexafiller. It's a lovely evergreen climber and it belongs to the family Lardisabellisi. It's very often confused by nurserymen with Holbelia latifolia, which looks very, very similar. The way to tell them apart, because they're often mislabelled in nurseries, Hexafiller, Stauntonia Hexafiller, actually means 6 leaves. But each leaf here comprises of either, we've got a combination of 5 on this one, 7 on this one. But basically, this has more than 5 leaflets on each leaf. Whereas the Holbelia tend to be 3 to 5 leaflets. So have a careful look if you're buying one in a nursery. We had a beautiful one up against one of the sheds in the nursery area, which was there for years and years. Flowers in May, beautiful panicles of dusky pink scented flowers, and then it produces these lovely fruits, oval fruits, that resemble a passion fruit, but they do colour to a curious mauvey purpley colour, so they look like rather bulbous sausages, hence the common name of sausage vine. They are edible. If you cut them and open them, they look a bit like a passion fruit inside, but slightly more tasteless, I would say, than a passion fruit. But the reason I'm showing you this one is that sadly we lost our mature Stauntonia last year. Fortunately, it's self-seeded a few places, so I have got a couple of them growing on, and this one has got its name on it to replace the one we lost in the nursery. So for my last climber, I've chosen something a little bit different. This is Apios americana. Potato bean is its common name. Well, one of them. It's got several common names. American groundnut, cinnamon vine, and I could go on and on. It grows from a tuber, a bit like a potato, small potato, and these are edible. They can be eaten, cooked a bit like a potato, and apparently they taste sort of like a nutty potato. But it has beautiful wisteria-like clusters of pink pea-like dusky pink flowers from midsummer right through into the autumn. The leaves apparently are edible as well, although I haven't tried them myself, but it does make a really attractive climber. It may say might not be fully hardy, but this again, like so many plants here, have proved perfectly hardy here. But if you're a little bit worried, what you can do is take up some of the tubers in the autumn, store them in the greenhouse or somewhere frost-free, much as you would do like you would do with a dahlia, and then plant them out again in the spring. And this is just about 6 little tubers that I planted round this little support, and they've put on all this growth already this year. Not many people grow these. You'll struggle to find them in most garden centres and nurseries, but they did undergo a huge rise in popularity during COVID, when they were featured one week on Gardener's World, when Monty Don showed them, and then we had a lot more demand for them. The nuts also produced in the bean-like fruits that follow the flowers can also be eaten as well. So lots of edible parts of it. And something really different, well worth a try. Once again, thank you for watching our video. Please remember to like and subscribe so that you get notifications when the next one comes out.